happy now, sir?
Hey guys, and welcome to my May wrap-up. I ended up reading 9 books this month, which is crazy. I think a lot of that is because I read a lot of Coho books for the video I just recorded. It is up right now if you want to go check that out. But let's go ahead and get into it because I have a lot to talk about. So the first book I read in May is A Thousand Boy Kisses by Tilly Cole. I heard this was a very sad book, so I just wanted to pick it up. My boyfriend actually got this for me for Christmas. It was either my birthday or Christmas, and I really wanted to read it. First of all, this book is huge, but this is basically about Rune and Poppy, and they are childhood friends to lovers. It says, one boy, one girl, a bond that is forged in an instant and cherished for a decade. A bond that neither time nor distance can break. A bond that will last forever, or so they believe. When 17-year-old Rune returns from his native Norway to the sleepy town of Blossom Grove, Georgia, where he befriended Poppy, as a child, he has just one thing on his mind. Why did the girl who was one half of his soul, who promised to wait faithfully for his return, cut him off without a word or explanation? Rune's heart was broken 2 years ago when Poppy fell silent. When he discovers the truth, he finds that the greatest heartache is yet to come. So basically, this is about Rune and Poppy, and it shows their friendship from when they were kids leading up until today. I think it goes back and forth. I'm not sure. I don't quite remember. But it shows that, and then it shows how Rune is basically ghosted by Poppy and he doesn't know why. And eventually he comes back and he's just giving her the cold shoulder because he was hurt by her because she never texted him again once he moved away. Like I said, she had ghosted him, so he was pretty mad about it until he finds out why she didn't speak to him. It's obviously very sad. You know that going in that it's going to be very sad. I thought it would be sadder, honestly. Towards the end, it got real sad. But I was expecting to be like crushed. It was still very, very sad, but I felt like I just was preparing to be absolutely destroyed. So I'm kind of happy that I wasn't destroyed by it. It was still a pretty sad book, and I ended up giving a 4 out of 5 stars. Next is Happy Place by Emily Henry. This is her new release, and I had to pick it up because the cover. That's it. The cover is amazing. This color is amazing. I can't take it. The yellow, like even when the dust jacket is off, it's so pretty, and now I'm not going to be able to get this back on. So this is about Harriet and Wynn, and they basically broke up 5 months ago, and they haven't told any of their friends yet. And their friend group has this like beach house that they go to every year and spend time together. And this year was the last year that they can go to the beach house because the house is getting sold. So they basically have to go on this mini vacation with all of their friends and act like a couple, act like they've never broken up before, which kind of rubbed me the wrong way because, like, I don't know, if I feel like if you're really that close with those people, why wouldn't you just tell them that you guys aren't together anymore? Like, I understand it does make things complicated because I'm in a friend group where it's 2 couples. Say if we broke up, I would be telling them. I just feel like if you're that close to somebody, I don't know why you would hide it. So that's one thing that kind of was off to me about this book. But mostly I just love the friendships in this book. I love all the girls' friendship. There's like 3 girls in this friendship, and when they have their conversations, I think it is so funny. I wasn't really a huge fan of the romance aspect just because I feel like their main thing was not communicating. I feel like they didn't communicate very well. So I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. Still really loved the book. And there was a lot of cute quotes in here. Hold on, let me find one. This is a long one, so bear with me. Yes, when I said, I like your body and your face and your hair and your skin, and I like how you're always warmer than me, and how you never sit still except when you're really trying to concentrate on what someone's saying, and I like how you always fix things without being asked. You're the only one of us who will actually take the trash out before it's spilling over, and every time you're doing anything, going to the store or doing laundry or making yourself breakfast, you'll always ask if anyone else needs anything, and I like how I know when you're about to text me from the other side of the room because you make this really specific face. I don't know, I just love I just love when people describe small things about a person. I just think it's so sweet, and that's why I really enjoyed this book. I loved all the detail, and yeah, this was definitely a good read. Now moving on to all of my rereads, that is the only 2 new books I read. All the rest of these are Colleen Hoover because I reread books for the 7 Coho Books in 7 Days video, so if you want to hop over there, you can go ahead. But let's get into these. So starting off, I read Ugly Love. So if you haven't read any of these books, I don't know what you're doing, because usually these are like the first books that people read because they're so easy to get through. I ended up giving Ugly Love a 4 stars. This is basically about Miles and Tate moves in with her brother, and Miles is actually her brother's best friend neighbor because they live in like an apartment complex. It's not exactly love at first sight for Tate Collins when she meets the tormented and secretive Miles Archer. They wouldn't even go so far as to consider themselves friends. The only thing Tate and Miles have in common is a mutual physical attraction that can't be denied. Once their desires are out in the open, they realize they might have stumbled on the perfect no strings attached arrangement. He isn't looking for love and she doesn't have time for it, so that leaves just the sex. What they've got could be surprisingly satisfying as long as Tate can stick to the 2 rules Miles has for her. Never ask about the past, don't expect a future. They think they can handle it, but everything is different when real emotions start to change the equation. This is basically a no strings attached relationship, and what happens in no strings attached relationships, they end up falling for each other. And what I didn't understand is how Tate agreed to this knowing she had feelings for them even before they had sex. Like, she had feelings for this man even before she touched the man. Like, you know that's gonna break your heart when he tells you that he doesn't want a future with you. And he's also very secretive about his past. Like, he will never talk about his past. So Tate gets very aggravated with him because he never opens up to her. I thought this book was pretty good. Also, when it comes to Tate's past, it gets a little weird and kind of cringy, and it doesn't make sense to me. But I still found this really enjoyable. I still enjoyed it as much as I did the first time I read it, so I gave it a 4 stars. Next is Maybe Someday, and this is probably the book that I changed my mind about the most. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. I still really enjoyed it. This is about Sydney and Ridge, and one day Sydney is out on her balcony and she sees this man playing guitar across the way on the other apartment complex, and she realizes that it's Ridge, and they actually start texting because she seems to be the only one that is actually interested in his music. Like, when he was playing, she just got really into it, so he starts texting her, asking her opinion about the songs and stuff. That way they form a relationship. So when Sydney finds out that her boyfriend had cheated on her with her roommate and best friend, she decides to move in with Ridge because that is the closest person she has. And so they end up gaining feelings. Now, if you guys do not want to be spoiled, I would skip this part right now and scoot over there a little bit. I will show you when to skip to. But when he cheated on Maggie with Sydney, I'm sorry, it just was hard to root for them after he cheated on a very good girl. Like, she was a good character, she was a good person, and I don't know, it was just hard to root for them after that. It was still a cute story, but it definitely wasn't as enjoyable as it would have been if there was no cheating trope. Moving on. All Your Perfects is a 5 stars, and I'll tell you why it's a 5 stars. This is about Quinn and Graham, and they struggle with infertility, and this book is basically showing then and now, then when they met and fell in love, and now when they're struggling with infertility and they're having these arguments and their marriage is falling apart. I really, really love this book. I love a book where they fall in love and then they kind of have some space, or if they're in a really rough patch and then they find their way back to each other, they re-fall in love with each other. I love that. I eat that up. So it was obvious that I loved this book. It was so good, guys. Like, if you haven't read this book, I don't know why it doesn't have as much hype as any of her other books do, but I just absolutely loved it. I ate it up and I can't get enough of it, and I will read this forever. Moving on to Regretting You, here's another book that is not as hyped up that I think should be, because man, this is a good book. This is about Morgan and Clara, and Clara is Morgan's daughter, and it basically goes back and forth between the two point of views. It says Morgan Grant and her 16-year-old daughter Clara would like nothing more than to be nothing alike. Morgan is determined to prevent her daughter from making the same mistakes she did by getting pregnant and married way too young. Morgan put her own dreams on hold. Clara doesn't want to follow in her mother's footsteps. Her predictable mother doesn't have a spontaneous bone in her body. With varying personalities and conflicting goals, Morgan and Clara find it increasingly difficult to coexist. The only person who can bring peace to the household is Chris, Morgan's husband, Clara's father, and the family anchor. But that peace is shattered when Chris is involved in a tragic and questionable accident. The heartbreaking and long-lasting consequences will reach beyond just Morgan and Clara. While struggling to rebuild everything that crashed around them, Morgan finds comfort in the last person she expects to, and Clara turns to the one boy she's been forbidden to see, which, with each passing, new secrets, resentment, and misunderstanding make mother and daughter fall further apart. So far apart, it might be impossible for them to ever fall back together. So the reason why I love this book so much is I just thought it was so relatable, because if you've ever had a relationship with your mom, I know when I was a teenager, I didn't want anything to do with my mom. And now that I'm older, I obviously realize that she was probably right, and I was a lot wronger than she was most of the time. So I just loved hearing a book that talked about that mother-daughter relationship, because I did grow up with a single mom. So when Clara's father passes away, it kind of becomes that mother-daughter, like, it's only the two of us dynamic. I thought it was so cool seeing the mom fall in love as the daughter's falling in love. I just thought that was such a cool way of doing it. Next is November 9 by Colleen Hoover. This is about Fallon and Ben, and Fallon and Ben meet in a restaurant when Fallon is talking to her father, and they are kind of getting hot and heavy, getting in an argument, when Ben acts like he is her boyfriend when she's never met this man in her life. So after they hang out that day, they decide to meet each other on every November 9th. It says Fallon meets Ben, an aspiring novelist, the day before her scheduled cross-country move. Leads them to spend Fallon's last day in LA together, and her eventful life becomes the creative inspiration Ben has always sought for his novel. Over time, and amidst the various relationships and tribulations of their own separate lives, they continue to meet on the same day every year, until one day Fallon becomes unsure if Ben has been telling her the truth or fabricating the perfect reality for the sake of the ultimate plot twist. Can Ben's relationship with Fallon and simultaneously his novel be considered a love story if it ends in heartbreak? I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I'm pretty sure I basically gave it that because I really enjoyed this story. It's just the plot twist. I could not get over the plot twist. He just does something to her that I don't think could be forgivable, especially that quickly. Maybe I'd forgive somebody, but especially not as quickly as she forgave him. I thought it was kind of unrealistic. Overall, I thought the book was pretty cute. I love the way Ben talks to Fallon, and the things he says to her is so sweet. Like, some of these are so adorable. I have to read this to you guys. Hold on. It says, "They're uncomfortable because you make people feel like looking at you is wrong. And believe me, you're the type of person people want to stare at. That is so cute. Or the only person who gives a shit about a few scars on your face is you. Like, just some of the things he says that just knock her ego. Like, he's like, look, nobody's staring at you for that reason. They're staring at you because you're beautiful. And he just, you can tell that he is bringing her up, and her confidence is so much better by the end of this book. He's so into writing a book that everything he does for her and everything they do, he wants to be absolutely perfect for her. And he says book worthy, and he wants their first kiss to be book worthy, their first time to be book worthy, and it's just so sweet. I highly recommend this book. The plot twist kind of takes a hold of you in a negative way, but overall I really enjoyed this book. Moving on to one of my favorite books by her, I read Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover, and this is so good, guys. I can't even explain. It says, after serving 5 years in prison for a tragic mistake, Kenna Rowan returns to the town where it all went wrong, hoping to reunite with her 4-year-old daughter, but the bridges Kenna burned are proving impossible to rebuild. Everyone in her daughter's life is determined to shut Kenna out, no matter how hard she works to prove herself. The only person who hasn't closed the door on her completely is Ledger Ward, a local bar owner, and one of the few remaining links to Kenna's daughter. But if anyone were to discover how Ledger is slowly becoming an important part of Kenna's life, both would risk losing the trust of everyone important to them. The two form a connection despite the pressure surrounding them, but as the romance grows, so does the risk. Kenna must find a way to solve the mistakes of her past in order to build a future out of hope and healing. So I loved this book just because it felt like Ledger and Kenna's relationship was very like Romeo and Juliet-esque, because I can't say that word, esque. They form a connection knowing that neither of them should be with that person, and they just can't help themselves. And I love it. I ate it up, as I said. This was so good, guys, and the kid in this story is so good. I just feel like it's a masterpiece, and I think everybody should read it. This is the only Coho book that I've cried at, which should tell you something because I don't cry at books usually. Movies is a different story, but I don't know. I just don't cry at books, and I cried at this one. And look at the cover. If that didn't tell you, I don't know what did. Now the last book that I read for the month of May is Hopeless. I reread Hopeless for the other video. This is about Sky and Holder. And when Holder sees Sky, he is so drawn to her and so captivated by her, and he doesn't know why. And they are both keeping secrets from each other, and it's very, very obvious that they are. So they both get kind of frustrated with each other because they won't open up about the secrets that they're hiding. And they both have a lot of emotional childhood trauma, and they kind of just work through it together. And I also love that in books. I love when they're scarred. You know, you gotta have some trauma to make a good story, you know. So when they both have trauma and they just kind of work through it together as a team, I think that's really cool. And I think this was one of Colleen Hoover's first books, but I'm not sure. I know the Slam series is one of her first series, and I have it over there. I just haven't read it yet. But yeah, with that being said, I think I gave this like a 4 out of 5 stars. It's still a really good book. Very sad though. I definitely look up the trigger warnings before reading this book, and I say that very loudly because it is a very, very, very sad book. Same with November 9, but yeah, I just love this book, and I don't know why. I don't understand how people don't like Colleen Hoover, because I just think these are so good. Maybe I just haven't read enough different books, but I think she's always going to be one of my favorite authors. But that is going to be all for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell to get notified every time I post. Thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure to check out that 7 Coho books in 7 days. I'll see you guys next time. Bye, loves.